Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Youth Plus Radio, where we're going beyond conversations and having discussions with young people, keeping them at heart, but also taking their needs and concerns seriously, sharing stories of hope, stories of inspiration, and stories of empowerment. Today, I'm joined by two fantastic gentlemen. One is Sagini Obuba. He's the Communications and M&E at Youth Alive Kenya, and we'll get more into what Youth Alive does. But also he's an alumnus of the McKinsey Forward Program, and if I'm not wrong, the Mastercard Foundation Africa Youth Think Tank.
Yeah.
I got it right, yeah?
You got it right. Yeah, and I'm happy, very happy to be here.
Pleasure. Thank you for being with us, Boniface. And we also have a great gentleman, Joseph Owino. He was a participant at the Participate 2022 International Conference. We'll get into that a bit later. You're a Disability Inclusion Champion, and also the chairperson of the Universities and Colleges Students with Special Needs Association of Kenya. So we're also going to get a bit into that. So gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Feel at home, feel free. Boniface, since you came fully branded. Youth Alive, for those who are listening, what is Youth Alive? What are its origins? What does Youth Alive do?
Okay. First, I want to introduce you in some sense. I know you're a lot of things, but you're also a board member at Youth Alive Kenya.
Yes.
So Youth Alive Kenya is a youth-led, youth-serving organization that has been serving young people since 1999. So we're talking about 23 years. But that is a loaded definition. So let me just unpack it.
Please do.
So youth-led meaning that most of our staff members are under 35. So, I mean, when you go to an organization, I'm the head of communications, and most organizations don't have a head of communications who looks young as I do, you know. Youth serving in the sense that we are actually working towards empowerment of young people. We envision a world where, at least in the Kenyan context, where young people, are able to actually achieve whatever they put themselves like in their mind, you know. Yes. And we want to insist that youth is the people between 18 and 35. Their diversity. And in some sense, I feel the younger youth are sometimes left out, the millennials and Gen Z, and sometimes in rooms where decision making is done, guys who are 35 or even above want to brand themselves as young. So I want to insist that youth is, or a young person is not a young person at heart. They're actually young. So that is what we do. We run interventions. We call them projects that are designed towards some of these issues that young people face, and we're gonna go into some of those issues, I think, later in the show. So we try together with other stakeholders within the youth civil society. We don't work alone. We work with many stakeholders, including government and non-state actors, to make sure that young people have a space. And we like to advocate for youth issues. So it happens that there are some spaces where if Youth Alive didn't speak, that young people's voices will not be heard at all. So for instance, like 2 weeks ago, I was in some meeting where some decisions were being made, and this is a government entity. And Youth Alive was invited as a voice for young people. So if I kept quiet as a young person, it literally meant that young people's voices would not have been heard or picked in the decisions that were being made in those rooms. So we advocate and we speak for young people, but also we capacity build, and currently we're using this framework or methodology of what we call working groups. And these are youth organizations that are much younger than us, that we are hand-holding them. So look at them as young leaders who are trying to do something in their own communities. So we are really trying to handhold them. The same way in the business world, you would have maybe accelerators and stuff. So we pick on youth organizations, maybe they are self-help groups from the grassroots, and we handhold them in the journeys so they get registered, they're able to access funding. Sometimes we do granting, and we do a lot of trainings on in terms of capacity, And the other way we work also, we get into partnerships and networks, so that we bring together voices so that young people can be heard. We are part of the YSO, that is Youth Serving Organizations. And this is a consortium of youth serving organizations across the country. And what we do is when we come together, we can raise concerns. For instance, just 2 days ago, we did a press release we felt that the way the PSS were chosen didn't reflect youth inclusion. And we called on the president, the current president, to actually do something about it. That is not possible for a young person as one individual to do. So when we come together, we come together, we become a force, many organizations together, and then we can actually speak out for the young people. We're gonna delve further into what we do, but as a matter of introduction, we are essentially an organization that is looking to make sure that young people are empowered in society and they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. And we do that in 3 thematic areas. There are so many social ills in society, but we tend to focus on 3. And one is livelihoods and economic empowerment, which is a big deal for young people. We also want to look at social well-being and gender equity, and things like mental health, fighting inequalities, and of course gender equity, making sure that young women particularly, are represented in these spaces we are fighting for young people. That also young women are also being heard, and also good governance and human rights. So how can young people be involved in processes, of governance processes? How can young people be part of power? How can young people contribute to decision-making processes in the counties, and at the national level? So those are our 3 focus areas. There's a lot that we do not do, but we partner with other organizations, especially the member organizations or the working groups, who might be doing other things, but we help to reinforce their work. So together we can have a bigger platform for young people.
And greater impact as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say about decision making and the way or the manner in which youth voices have been lacking in recent years, recent decades. I had this quote once in must have been 2019, and it directly in reference to young people. It was that if as young people we don't have a seat at the table, then we're on the menu. And we've seen situations play out before at various levels of society, whether that's private sector, public sector. So it's interesting and encouraging that an organization like Youth Alive is focused on actually getting that youth voice out there. Question on the working groups. Which counties are they sort of domiciled in, or are they in just a small section of Kenya, Nairobi, or do they spread across?
Okay, we work in 12 counties. So we have working groups from 12 counties. Essentially, a working group covers a county, but within that working group, we have member organizations. You get we have Nairobi, Kakamega, we have Siaya, West Pokot, we have Machakos, Mombasa. I may not mention the 12 of them, but they are 12, and we're actually venturing out to get more. And this is a focus that we want to really focus on the working groups. And actually they're coming to us for help. So how can we create that platform, formalize our relationship, beyond the 12 counties? So we are working on doing 13, 14, who knows, even 47.
One day.
As time goes.
Step by step. Joseph.
Yes, sir.
How are you today?
I'm very well. I'm feeling great.
I'm very interested to find out more about your work, particularly within the Universities and Colleges Students Association, Students with Special Needs Association. When was it started? How many, or is it spread? How many universities is it spread across? What's I can imagine what the end goal is, but from your point of view, just tell us a bit more about the work you do as a chairperson.
This is Joseph Owino, as you've mentioned, the current chairperson of the University and Colleges Students Special Needs Association of Kenya. This is an association born from the sheer purpose of ensuring that issues about enhancing disability inclusion in different decathlons in this country is brought to book. And first, from my background, I'm a student at Mount Kenya University, pursuing a degree in economics and statistics in my fourth year of study. And I've been able to go through the leadership structure or the leadership domain from the university's perspective, because when I joined, I first got into the Mount Kenya University Special Needs Association, where I served as a vice chair. That is from 2020, late 2019 to early 2021. That is nearly 2 years as the vice chair of the association that brings together student disability studying in Mount Kenya University. That is from the main campus. Then later on, in early 2021, I took over as the chairperson of the association in Mount Kenya University. And I got the challenge. I saw the real challenge, how students with disability experience in accessing higher education. And this comes from the back and forth. We're having stakeholders, we're having engagements, we're having players in this sector who may be aware or also may not be aware of the issues that are bedeviling our fellows in the institutions. And through this experience, I got to develop the passion of advocating for the interests of these persons, mainly students and youth with disabilities, to ensure that issues about education, because education stands as one of the prime factor that can help build a society. And we can't just talk about it and leave out persons with disabilities, because these are people have the potential, they have the brains to deliver, and we must build or craft inclusive systems in society to support their development. And so from that point, serving as the chairperson, got to engage with a number of student leaders, serving student disabilities from other universities. Then with the challenges that we share or our experiences, we get to identify there's something that needs to be done. Because one is we have a students' union in the country that is not giving that space, well-crafted enough space for students with disability in terms of representation, and looking into even other policies that whenever they are being discussed, students with disabilities are left out. And this also affects them. It's not just when we talk about the issues that affect students generally, it's not it's not reserved that when you talk about it generally, then you've talked about the issue about student with disability. There are specifics that affect these persons that don't affect the whole student population. And so when you're out of the decision-making table, as you had enumerated it, we are affected and to a larger extent. And it's not just about 1 or 2, 3 people, but this affects into the lineage that even of those who are coming after us. So with engaging with a number of student leaders, we get to identify, a time comes that everybody needs to get his own house. A time comes when everybody must coalesce, and come into terms and bring out something, that stay to, that will stay, to the long term, and ensure that the issues affecting these persons are solved, from the multi-stakeholder point of view. Because if we have a national student union that, focuses on the issues primarily of all students, how to address issues of student disability, or even from a multi-stakeholder point of view, will be a great challenge. But when we come from spaces and say, let's craft something that takes care of student disabilities, then it gets challenged the stakeholders and say, let's hear from these people. What do they have on board? What are they bringing on board? And so how can we mainstream and ensure that their stay in these spaces is enhanced and well crafted out? And so with that, we got to forge the idea of bringing up the association that's the national association now, bringing together student disabilities from the higher education institutions that is covering university colleges in the country. And with this as the brainchild, as the person who carrying the mantle as the chairperson, we've been able to reach out to a number of student leaders. At the moment, we're still working with the student leaders who are working on issues of special needs and the student disabilities as a whole in a number of universities. And currently, we've been able to reach out to the student leaders working in 40 different universities in the country. So what we want to the association just got registered recently, 30th of August. That's when we got the official registration from the Register of Societies. And we've also been officially recognized by the National Council for Persons with Disabilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you. As an organization of persons with disabilities, because the biggest challenge is to ensure that issues about inclusive education, it's not just about a talk that we go to conferences and discuss about issues of inclusive education, but rather what are we doing in the ground, so that because I'm a student of statistics and the data is very important, so that we ensure that when we're doing the statistics 2-3 years down the line, we get to see an increased enrollment of students with disabilities from the basic learning levels to the education levels. Because in primary schools and secondary schools, we're glad and we're happy that we have special schools. Yes, we don't have an university, which is special, and we don't want to have it. But for what we want is to ensure that each and every university in the country, each and every college in the country ensures that we have preserved issues about disability inclusion from the environment that we have, the accessibility framework. Is the buildings that we have, the classes that we host, are they accessible for persons with disabilities? Going to issues about the information communication and technological systems that we have, are they very accessible to persons with disabilities? So that the learning, my learning and the learning of a fellow with visual impairment and the learning of a fellow with hearing impairment is not affected because of the disability vis-a-vis the systems that we have in these institutions. So those are the broad issues that we want to get in engagement into with different stakeholders, so that in the long term we see an increased enrollment, because we have provisions that are there to support persons with disabilities in different sectors, but it all must start from the educational sector point of view.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I'd be curious to know, first of all, congratulations. 40 universities is no mean feat. That is exceptional.
Thank you.
40 universities, that's quite, and given how recent the association is, that is quite substantial. I'm curious, what's the difference in the engagement between the student leaders who are very open and willing to have that, to provide that support, vis-a-vis these university administrations? Because universities can tend to be overly bureaucratic for reasons I guess only administrations would understand. Is there a difference in the reception you're getting from student leaders vis-a-vis the school administrations themselves, or are the school administrations equally embracing the different aspects of inclusion that you're pushing for and fighting for?
Even though we haven't had direct engagements with a number of university administration, but I can tell you that when you are submitting the request for registration of the association, we got a good support mechanism from the universities, because one of the requirement for us to get registered was at least we must get endorsement, at least 10 universities endorsing this move, so that the registry of societies approves the registration of this association. And when they required a minimum of 10, I can tell you that in a period of a month, we managed to get 12 universities endorsing this move. And because I was working with the student leaders working on issues of students with disabilities, and even the response after getting the endorsement letters, they were saying, the university is feeling challenged, and they want to work with you, so they are open, they're saying this is a nice idea, this is a great idea that needs to be worked on, and they are open to working with you so that we can fast track this. And it was like a pat on the shoulder for me, because at least from a simple idea some could even appreciate. And one of the people who stood out was the dean of students from Technical University of Kenya, Professor, is called Professor Okoth. This Professor Mondi Okech, sorry, is somebody we even had a chat and told me, even if you want to launch, we'll give you facilities here for free. Come and launch the association here, and even if you launch it elsewhere, you must come and have an engagement with our students here, because we're into a different world where inclusion of every person needs to be hastened. Disability is very funny. How I always define it is it doesn't respect. It won't respect you in terms of age. It won't respect you in terms of your status, whether religious status, political status. When it comes, and it doesn't select the age that it will affect you. For me, I wasn't born with a disability. I got it from a minor accident. And so there are people who get it in their older ages. There are people it doesn't select. That's overview. So, we must just craft these systems, because if you hinder us, our penetration to the systems, then, you never know about tomorrow. Disability, we always say, and this comes from my home MCA, he says, disability is a club that is, free to join, but you can't get out of it. It's easy to join, but getting out of it is very difficult. So, that kind of overview. Yeah. So, it must just, start from, there's a responsibility must just, lie with the stakeholders to ensure that we build inclusive systems to take care of these persons. Because we have doctrines, both locally and internationally. In here, we have the Constitution. We have the Persons with Disabilities Act, and all other doctrines from the local arrangement, or, in our national overview, the national, orientation. But in the international spaces, like in the AU, we have the protocol to the African Charter around the peoples and human rights and the rights of persons with disabilities in Africa. As well as globally, we have the United Nations Conventions for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We must ensure that these, doctrines and, good enough is the country, signed to be part of them, part of, those treaties, this charter and the convention. And after the country signing to be part of it, they were ratified by the Parliament of Kenya. And so we must ensure that what these doctrines provide are actualized,
reflected on the ground.
Reflected on the ground, and are also in tandem with what we have in the Persons with Disabilities Act, as well as the Constitution of Kenya 2010 in entirety, so that there's that conformity and universality in practice, and what is reflected in our society. Yeah,
that's really motivating, the kind of work you've done so far.
Thank you.
And just like we were saying, it's not just a matter of meeting in a cozy room, having a discussion, and then we go back to default settings.
No.
These are things that are actually grounded in law and need to be actualized.
And we will follow it up so that these things are actualized. Because at the end of it all, we want to see that that person who is not part of the engagement, who is not part of the discussion, gets to benefit from the discussion.
Yeah.
You get that? That child who's in Turkana, born with a disability, that child who's in Karatina, born with a disability, the child who's in Mumias, born with a disability, we must ensure that he or she gets to actualize his or her potential to entirety. Because, there's this book I did in high school, Damunyeusi. It left me with a quote that stays with me up to date. One of the stories called Mizizi na Matawi. The line says, Mungu akikupa kilema, ukupa na mwenendo wake. He knows what is put inside these individuals. And so they must be actualized, because I have examples of people who've broken the barriers that people could think the disability brought about, and again exploited their potential. One very special example is DJ Euphoric. I think you've heard of him. Yeah. This is a person who rose from getting disability is in his primary school level in class 6, I think so. And this is the example that at least we always use, that the family never abandoned him. He supported him, through thick and thin, and supported his interest. And that's the very funny thing. Don't restrict this person to what you want as a parent. Exactly. Get to know his interest. Yeah. And this person wanted to go do DJ after his high school. The parent gave him the opportunity, go do. And supported him, up to a time, that this person, when President Uhuru Kenyatta was retiring, he was the official State House DJ. You get that? Yeah. He was the official State House DJ, that each and every function happening in State House, he was the DJ, Wow. You get that? Yeah. And he's a person on wheelchair. Yeah. You get that? Yeah. So, these persons must just be supported. And that comes in, when God gives, with that Usemi, when God gives you a person disability, he knows the plan he has for him.
Exactly. Yeah.
This person rising from disability, rising as a person with disability, from the deep villages of Kisii, getting to be now the State House DJ. Who knew? And we have many people who have potential, who could do that job very well, who have no disability.
There's actually no limitation to what anyone can do.
Yeah. So we wanted to see this work out. And one of the issues that we want to work out, apart from issues of inclusive education, which we must ensure that accessibility frameworks are provided, because accessibility controls a lot in the disability arena. From infrastructure and infrastructure buildings, we have the information communication and technological systems in entirety. When you sorted out that, you sorted about a lot of issues in the disability arena. Then issues about resources. The resources persons with disabilities need are very expensive. You get that?
Yeah.
For those persons who are using wheelchair. You know, you can't get it like you get a bicycle for 4,000, 5,000 and you get a good bicycle. No. At least it's a 50,000, you know. And when you're coming, you know, from a humble family, you know, that even raising, you know, like you see that now the government is, you know, is providing, you know, like relief food. Will a person, you know, like from such settings get even, you know, like a wheelchair? It's a big problem, you know.
Difficult.
And so, you know, that's why, you know, like we need to hasten these engagements and ensure that, you know, like we ensure that issues about disability inclusion, issues about disability awareness, this information gets to people, back to even to the villages, so that we ensure that these persons get whatever they need at an early age, so that they are not hampered, or, you know, they're not hindered in accessing whatever they want. Then apart from that, issue about resources still, persons with visual impairment. Those are people, you know, like they won't use a pen like I use, and a pen costs 10 bob. A book costs even 10 or 20 shillings if it goes, you know, like so much. You know, there's a person who, for him to read, he needs a braille paper and a braille machine. A simple braille machine, get me very well. A simple braille machine costs at least Kenya shillings 85,000.
Wow.
You get that? That is like a pen to me. You get that? For me, I use a book. Them, they use braille papers. As braille paper is sold, the minimum quantity is in rims. A simple rim costs around 600 to 700 shillings. You get that? For you can even purchase a book of 20 shillings. So look into that level of economic disparity. If this person is from, you know, like an area or a family that is not well endowed economically, you know, it gives them a challenge of, you know, like climbing up the ladder. And so we must ensure that we get engagements, get into engagement with stakeholders and see how issues about resource facilitation, resource provision among persons with disabilities, especially those in education institutions, is hastened, so that these people, you know, like are not, you know, like you go to school and you're told no to purchase these items, because I've been into such, you know, like situation that, you know, like they're asking, you know, these students with disabilities, you know, you need to go purchase the braille machines. You're telling this person to go purchase a braille machine, a person who's supposed again to pay fees. Again, the same person needs to also take care of his accommodation. And you verily know that disability in itself is very, very expensive. Your accommodation is not the same as mine. You know, sometimes, for example, somebody on a crutch or on a wheelchair, you know, for you can walk, let's say, for example, even along a stretch of even a kilometer. Will you ask this person with the crutch to walk? He must just spend for his movement. You can ride a bike. I personally can't ride a bike. You know, I must just spend for my movement. You get that? That, you know, how disability is very expensive. And so we must ensure that the engagements around these institutions, around issues about education for persons with disabilities, is hastened to ensure that these people can access education as it's envisaged from both the local and international doctrines, to allow these persons, you know, like access up to higher education to the levels they desire without much interference in terms of resources and even manpower facilitation. Issues about sign language interpretation and all, you know, other guides and all other issues that comes in. We must ensure that these people get whatever they want to support their development and empower them fully. Outside the issues about inclusive education, we are also looking into issues how we can hasten issues about you know, like empowerment. We talked about it, and for us, we want to go through it from a different perspective. Issues about like talent and skill development. Issues about sports for persons with disabilities is very, very important for me, and it's very dear to my heart because I'm a sportsman. I do taekwondo.
Nice.
I do. Now, for me, I do what is called now para taekwondo.
Tusicheze na wewe.
No. No, I do that in the ring, not here. I can't fight you. So, no, like, I've got the challenge when I got to para taekwondo, you know, people seeing me go game and, you know, like, do all that I can do in that line. You know, everybody is here, I want to do this, not knowing that, you know, our games are different from the games for normal people. You know, like we have games that there are games that I can do, there are games that I can't do in the disability line. Because there are games that are identified, you know, there are games that are restricted because of a disability. There are games restricted for persons with hearing impairment. There are those that are restricted for persons with, you know, like visual impairment. There are those restricted for those with physical impairment affecting their lower limbs. For me, taekwondo is for those who have disability only in the hands. If you have disability in your lower limbs, you can't do it. You get that? So we want to create a system whereby we have a sports challenge for student disability in the campuses. And this is something that I'm envisaging that if it works well, we have the very, very first one next year.
Oh, nice.
So that because we have an institution called Kenya University Sports Association that organizes sports for students in the universities. It has never organized KUSA. It has never organized sports for student disability either. It's not there. And these are people who have potential. These are people who have talents that when they get to exploit, you can be the next Henry Wanyoike. You can be the next Impalambala. You can be the next Kipchoge. Because these are people who've made their name because of sport.
Yeah.
You get that?
Yeah.
And it can also happen for those with disabilities, because Henry Wanyoike is a person who is visually impaired and has done it. He has a name because of sport. Yeah. You get that? Yeah. The same about issues about still on talents, the music and art arena. We want to see how those persons with disabilities who have interest in issues of music and art can be supported and supported to activate their potential and fully realize them. Because I have one challenge. I think you all know Crystal Lasige.
Yes.
You know her as a musician. Yeah, most of you have known her because she's a musician. Yeah. She's now a senator. What has given her a name? It is the music. There's no other thing. Do you know the bachelor degree she holds?
No.
Master's? No. PhD? No. It's the music that she has done that has given her a name and a brand. And she's a person with visual impairment. You get that? Yeah. So, and it is because of that she has risen to the Senate, to defend now the issues about persons with disabilities and advocate for them. So we want to see many of her coming out. Both ladies and gentlemen who are are talented in that field and that arena, built and supported to ensure that they get to their, activate their potential to the highest limits possible. Yeah. And apart from that, is also issues about entrepreneurship, trade and employment issues. We have a provision in the Constitution for 5% job reservation for persons with disabilities. It can't work because of disability. It will only work when you have the qualifications. Yeah, you can't employ me because I have a disability. Disability will be a factor, yes, but you look at the qualification first.
To also do the job.
Yeah, the qualification is gotten from the education institutions. And as people come from the education institutions, we want to see how systems can be crafted to ensure that persons with disability, especially students with disability in that perspective, we have good numbers to ensure that when we go to any institution, we are not told of any figure less than 5% in terms of, because when you get to ask them, how many persons with disability have we employed? Even in in a workforce of even 100 people, you're told that they have employed two people with disability. That is lower than even the bar that has been set by the government. And it is because when you ask them why these two, then they say we don't know them, we can't access them. Why? Because these people don't have the information. They don't know the persons who have the qualification or the disability to be employed. Because 5% dictates that 1 in every 20, 1 in every 20 persons you're employing or you've employed is person with disability. So we want to ensure that with that we craft systems and we be a linkage of students who have the qualifications, those who are out of the education institutions, who want to link up with the job market, those in need of internships, attachments, and job placements, so that we ensure that we provide a strong linkage for them to get into the job market very easily, because we want to have that database, so that at the end of it all, we ensure that for those of us who want to get in whichever field, because we can't restrict the field. Everybody has his or her own interest. We ensure that they get to the job market very easily. That is on issues employment and labor. Issues about entrepreneurship and trade. We have entrepreneurs, persons with disabilities. We have the AGPO issue. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area, which has blatantly ignored the issues about persons with disability inclusion, starting from the country, the country implementing team to the continental framework. This is a trade arrangement that even has the protocol on youth and women in trade. But when you ask about persons with disability, there's not even a shell, leave alone the picture, a shell. you can't even see a skeleton of it, because what you are told, we've enumerated these as, we've identified these as a group to be approached or to be ensured that they're part and parcel. But when you try to dissect on the policy, when they are identifying the approaches to reach out to the youth, to the women, they even have the approaches to reach out to the civil society and all other players, but they've left out persons with disabilities. Why? Because they still view persons with disabilities as an afterthought in the engagements and their policy frameworks. Why? We ask ourselves, the approaches that we've set out to reach out to the youth, the approaches that we've set out to reach out to the women, when these approaches can't work well with persons with disability, they can't. They can't, even in a nutshell, they can't.
And that's the importance of inclusion, because once you have that inclusive factor, then you have a voice which actually has context and experience and perspective, which is then most applicable to actually implement, and it makes more sense, whether it's at the top heavy level or going all the way down to the grassroots. And it's an issue which definitely isn't limited to the borders of Kenya. It's continental, it's regional, it's global. Actually, Youth Alive recently held together a conference, Participate International Conference, and you are able to attend. Joseph, you're able to attend that conference as well. What was the sort of the thinking behind Participate? Because it brought together, if I'm not wrong, delegates from Kenya, from Zimbabwe, from Denmark. Very interesting mix of cultures and countries and experiences. Sort of what was the thinking behind that conference itself? Why Participate International Conference 2022?
Yeah. First of all, Joseph here is very passionate about, as you can see, about
very
issues,
and very knowledgeable and
I mean, and he's still a student. We wrote about his story. It's a very compelling story. As Youth Alive Person of the Month, and he was one of the participants at our Participate 22 International Conference. So Participate 22 International Conference is an activity or an initiative of a project that we run to Youth Alive together with DOOF. DOOF is the Danish Youth Council. And also Yet is a youth organization from Zimbabwe. So Participate, the thinking around Participate is that all the working groups or the member organizations under these three organizations, because if you look at DOOF, the umbrella organization of all youth organizations in Denmark. If you look at Yet, they also have what they call member organizations. For us, we call them working groups. And we're looking to have them as part of our working group here in Kenya. But it was lucky to be part of the Participate Conference, especially presenting issues to do with disability. And he did a splendid job. Now, the thinking around the conference was that how can we empower these member organizations that are behind these three organizations? How can we make them platforms for democratic change with a global view? Before we had the international conference, we had national conferences where we had a few more participants attending at the national level in all those three countries, and then out of them they were selected some to go to the international conference that happened in Kenya this time. Last year it was in Zim. This year it was in Kenya. Next year it's going to be in Denmark. Now, the reason why it's with a global view is that, within our contexts, our view is limited, So as a young leader from deep down in Kiambu, who is being supported by Youth Alive, then you get an opportunity to learn the context of someone like you from Zim or someone like you is passionate about some issues to do with youth or disability issues, from Denmark. So the conference, the thinking behind the conference was to bring together all these very passionate young people from across all these three countries, so that they can interface and cross-learn from the different contexts. And I think he's gonna, talk about what he learned and how he interacted as a participant in the conference. But the whole idea was that, all these young people and the organizations they represent become a platform for even more young people within the grassroots to actually be part of democratic change. The reason why we call it democratic is because there are now issues to do with, inclusion of people with disabilities or women, and inclusion of everybody in all their diversity, So this international conference was a platform for all of them to get that global view, And what happens after this is, during the conference they did what we call change projects. So they looked at what issues they have in their societies, their communities, and they went through things like problem trees, solution trees, and designed a project. So a change project, which they're going to implement after the conference. They actually started thinking about the implementation during the conference.
Wow.
So there was that commitment that this, whatever you've committed to, you're starting it and you're gonna run it. So now DOOF, the Danish Youth Council, opened an international pool of funds for this very passionate young leaders to do their change projects, and in their diversity, there's disability issues, the issues with sexual and reproductive rights, the issues with livelihoods, their diversity, governance. So all these young people represent all facets of young people from where they come from. And all these change projects are also going to go down to impact even more young people.
At the grassroots level now.
Yeah, at the grassroots level. So that is what happened at the international conference. It's going to happen again next year with a different set of participants, so that it's sustainable. So when they graduate from participate, they continue the good work with even young organizations or individual youths at the grassroots or students, for instance, and then another cohort comes. So as you can see, in 4 or 5 years, you're going to have a very big network, known as Participate Youth Network, that is doing really good work at the grassroots. But they are all thinking about how can they bring a global view into it, because Participate also allows them to do international partnerships. So we are really waiting to see these participants actually connecting and collaborating to do projects, between these countries. We are very happy to see. We'd be very happy to see a Kenyan from West Pokot, with their change projects, working together with someone maybe from Insofu project or the Danish youth student organizations like the one for Kenya here. If they can come together, and do something. So that is the whole idea behind Participate. The meeting of minds for greater things.
It sounds like a lot more than meeting of minds, because how long does the conference take?
The conference took nearly 2 weeks. So precisely it was 10 days of fun, but also of serious
hard
stuff,
work
and a whole change project was designed.
That's actually that's what sounds quite the challenge. Having 2 weeks to ideate, to conceptualize a project, which then, thanks to the Danish Youth Council and the International Pool of Funds, will also be resourced for its implementation. So it's not just meeting and chatting and writing down notes. It's actual action and sustainability of those actions.
I mean, the same way in the business world, you would like something like iHub, you select the best talented tech minds, and they have an idea, and you help them, make that idea reality. And 3-4 years later, whatever they did is actually having a lot of impact in the community. So we are doing the same thing now in our space, with very brilliant minds like his, and many others from these three different countries, to have bigger and bigger results and impact 10, 20 years from now. We'd be very happy to hear if they say that actually my journey started at the conference, or this idea was sparked at the conference. I had this partner from Denmark or from Zim because of the conference. So that's why I'm really passionate about this conference.
Yeah. Joseph, yes. How was it for you, the conference?
That was an amazing experience that I know will work for me very well to the long term, because of what I'm envisaging as a person working the disability line. Because there's a bit that you'd cut me. I was bringing up the issues, the last bit of what we're targeting on the leadership and governance prospect for persons with disabilities. Because if we don't just craft something that will work well for us, we are seeing a dwindling leadership prospect for persons with disabilities, because we've seen all manner of people coming out to come and eat from what is not theirs, and it delimits our spaces in the leadership prospect and the representation pictures are all, because we have problems also in leadership issues from our universities, and this was brought up by the Universities Act. And trying to work this out has been a challenge, but I know it will work at the end of it all, especially when being that now we have an association app and we'll be running in a few. And so I want to see a framework into how we can craft a strong leadership development avenue or a leadership development structure that goes to the long term. Because what I want to see to the long term is not that we have diverse spaces, we're having disability inclusion proponents in these diverse spaces, not just in politics, rather issues even in the legal arena, even issues in the transport sector, water, agriculture, health, education, and all manner of developments or engagements that we have in the society, so that when it's not just about Joseph Owino coming up, because for me I do economics. I don't have experience in issues in the legal issues a lot. I don't have experience in issues transport, but even the hospitality arena. But when we have that leadership development structure, and I'm glad that the Participate Conference gave me a good opportunity, because I got to link up with some fellows from Denmark who are having what is called the Young Leaders Program. What I want to emulate and fully put into place to ensure that this association brings together these student leaders with disabilities and those working on the issues of student disability. We have a platform where these people are capacity built and given the challenges to work on from diverse counties, because what I want to see in the next 10 to 15 years is that when we're discussing about disability policy or disability, bill or act in Wajir County Assembly, in Masabit County Assembly, in Embu County Assembly, it is not just about Joseph or two other fellows or three people being consulted all over the country. That will cause fatigue. Yes, experience is good, but rather we want to see that we have a disability inclusion proponent sitting in the Wajir County Assembly, sitting in Mandera and all other counties.
It's cascaded across. Yeah. It's not just centralized. It's
and not just about even the political arena only. In different spaces, even in issues of environment, because we are having a climate change as one of the biggest concerns at the moment. And so I want to see how we can bring in the Young Leaders Program, in our association, so that we bring the leaders from different spaces, because our universities are diverse and also takes interest of all, and also it's universal in its context. And so when we have these leaders from all, these universities brought up together, then we have what I know is we have the face of Kenya. You get that? So that at the end of it all, we will have equipped disability inclusion proponents from each and every corner of this country. So that whenever there are policies, even in places that I have never gone to, then I sit relaxed, because I know
tuko na shujaa
pahali. And so that is one of it. the issue about leadership and governance, we want to see, because we talked about the issue about PSS. Of the 585 applicants for those positions who are shortlisted, 29 of them were persons with disabilities. I do probability that even a single person didn't get to be lucky to be appointed as a person, as a PS. But what I envisage as a person who's championing for issues about persons with disabilities, that we'll have a time in this country that a person with disability will sit as one of the people in the appointing authority. That we won't be crying, where a person with disability being appointed. But from the Young Leaders program that at least we'll get to bring up, we'll see that one day we have a president as a person with disability, that we have cabinet secretaries, even 3 or 4, not even one that people are calling for, that person with disability must assemble, to call for press conferences, to see that a person with disability is appointed as CS or a PS. No, what I want is to build capacity of these persons in leadership context in their areas of interest, so that these persons will be seen not from their point of disability but from their point of expertise. You get that? Yeah. When we have it is possible, and it's possible even to see a person with disability, a CJ of the country, a speaker, and also a president, so that we at least we have our problems solved from a point now we have persons with disability. It's holistically solved, because so that we say we are now the appointing authority, and not that we'll just be picking persons with disability from the point of disability. No, these persons are experts in issues economy, issues legal arenas, and all other issues that comes in. And from what we brought out as a change project, for me, I sat with a fellow called Bernard Mbugwa. We brought out a change project idea, issues about provision of assistive devices for persons with disabilities. In Mbugwa's county is Muranga, my home county is Siaya County. We want to see, because these are also another issue that is very outstanding, and I told about about the resources. The devices to these persons are very, very crucial, because it is the device that will ensure that I'm mobile. It is the device that will ensure that I'm safe, especially for those who have, for example, those who have physical disability and those who have visual impairment. And it happens that the Participate International Conference came after we had celebrated the International White Cane Day. The celebration was an avenue to inform the society of the importance of that white cane. It is not a maridadi, as people may think, but it's a device that exemplifies mobility and safety for a person with visual impairment. Because through the use of that device, he or she will know, there's a ditch in front of me, I should get another way, or the next step at least is safe for me. You get that? So that we inform the society that when you see this person holding this, it's a person with disability. Because I have a harrowing experience with the persons in the transport sector that are very, very bad. Because I was escorting a person with visual impairment to go board a bus. Then there's a Nissan driver who was driving his vehicle recklessly. At a point, he was nearly hitting us. The worst thing that he says after that, we are telling you, why can't you take care of what you're doing? What he responds back to me, any macho. And I'm guiding a person with visual impairment who's holding a white cane. You get how that issue is happening. So the issues about awareness must come in when people have these devices. So we work, the change project that we design is provision of assistive devices. And not just about provision only, but it's about engaging the parents and caregivers of children and youth with disabilities to ensure that these persons are identified as persons with disabilities, they are assessed as persons with disabilities, they get to register as persons with disabilities, so that at the end of it all, this person is not just given the device and left there. But rather we know, the parent gets to know, or the person with disability gets to know the next point of action. Is he or she a child? What does he or need to get to school? Or is he a person who has gone overboard in terms of education? How can he or she be assisted to level up in terms of her development? So that is what what I'm envisaging with the change project. Then apart from that also, like with the international pool that came in during the conference, is I got to identify two very important or crucial organizations from Denmark. That is, one was the Danish Students' Union, and also because from our perspective, we also a students' union. Then there's also the Association for Youth with Disabilities, because we want to get how to develop or have exchange programs to see how is the disability issues being worked in Denmark, how are the disability issues being worked in Zimbabwe, and how are they working in Kenya, and what can we do to mainstream the gaps that we get to see in the levels of these countries? Because what we also did was from the global to the national youth context analysis, we saw the demographics. I think from all those countries, the demographic, the demography from Kenya stood high, like the youth demography stood high in Kenya compared to what we had from Zimbabwe and Denmark. And we want to see what about the disability demography. How what are the policies that they have in their countries? What are the policy, like the legislation that they put aside to ensure that the voices of persons with disabilities are also part and parcel of the engagements in their countries? And I'm glad because they are working on like with the different organizations, like for the Association of Youth with Disabilities in Denmark. They are working, they're already having some projects in Sierra Leone and Uganda. And I'm seeing into a framework, even a framework that we can get into to see that whatever they are working, we can get into an arrangement that we work together as a fraternity with those in Denmark, those in Uganda, and those in Sierra Leone at one touch to see how like we can level up issues about disability inclusion from those countries, and even get into the people, the Danish Students' Union, see how like the issues are affecting student disability in the educational framework. How is it working with them? Because for those in Denmark, the only disability policy that brings us together is the United Nations Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disability. For the African countries, we have two: that for the United Nations and that from the AU. So like we get to level up. What is it that is working for them? What is it that is working for us? And what is it that is not working for both of us? So that and what are the approaches that we can bring forth to stabilize all these issues and see the development of persons with disabilities from the youth analysis or from the youth capacity, work it out. And that is like the issues that we got to identify. And what stands out is issues education and the leadership, because we talk the democracy stands out like in the thematic area that Youth Alive Kenya works on, and also like from what we want to build, because we're emerging as leaders, but we don't want to just go do it and we leave. Because one of my goals is not like when you ask me when you get to ask me that what is your goal? Do you want to get to parliament or do you want to go to Senate? I'll tell you ruthlessly, that is not my goal. My goal is to ensure that even if I get there, or even if I want to get there, but those who the disability inclusion proponents who will get there, or we have those who will get there to the long term. So that even if I get there or not get there, but whenever I'm out, like I won't be in the system, but I know that there are people who will still fight. Not that after I'm out and I say, oh no, if Joseph were here, this would have worked out. Now that he's not here, things are in a bad shape. You get that? So what I want to see is we have that sustainability, like engagement to ensure that we have leaders to work these out in the long term. And also the policies that we have get implemented and worked out in entirety, not just like selectively. You get that?
Yeah.
So that's the bigger goal.
Joseph, what you've just said is very interesting. And trust you me, don't be surprised if you find yourself in some of those decision-making offices.
Amen.
I think as a country we've had a challenge in the past where too many people are choosing themselves as leaders, so they decide that they're leaders because they choose themselves. But actually, leaders are chosen by the people. True leaders, sustainable leaders, and you're giving a lot of positive and encouraging energy towards that kind of leadership that we need.
Thank you.
And I'm very blown away by where you have begun at universities, because that's where I think a lot of these issues that we face downstream begin because just like you're saying, people would be given jobs not because they're qualified, but because they are people with disability, and which isn't the way it should work. It should be, yes, I do have a disability, but I'm qualified. And once we fix the system of ease of access, ease of learning within our educational institutions, then even as a matter of law, things like housing will be implemented in line with what is provided easily accessible for everyone. And starting these conversations from that point of view, moving up even into the workforce, I think is one of the easiest ways we get to a fair and just society as Kenyans, before we even start thinking about too many things. We're building an economy, but we're leaving a significant part of our population out of it. As if they have nothing to contribute, which is not the case. It's a very, very, very crucial and definitely impactful conversation.
And thank you.
To have. And thank you for the work you're doing.
And thank you so much.
So the work you're doing, you and Bugwa, since the conference ended, has there been any progress, or is it still something that you're developing and working to improve before now you go into
on the last day of the conference, we, after getting to engage on the change projects that we have, after even being exposed to the international pool, we made a commitment. Especially after the conference, within the next weeks, we're supposed to do something. One, I've managed to reach out to some organizations. There is a National Council for Persons with Disabilities and the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya on the change projects that we try to bring out on the issues of provision of assistive devices, because they are very critical pillars in this. And what I don't want is to go with the change project, or even when I have the resources, or in terms of the devices, I don't want to go to throw away to them, but rather have a close engagement with them, because I'm their own. We are a family. But again, I want it to come out. One is give them what is tandem with what they want and medically fits them. Because what happens is we've had persons who bring in resources, for example, the devices, which don't work well with these persons, and hinder them, especially in medical avenues. For example, the wheelchairs. You can't just bring me in a wheelchair, but rather it must be something that fits me very well, so that I don't have any problem thereafter. And so with having engagements with the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, assessment stands out, and the assessment is also looked into from the medical view or to the medical field, so that we must have a medic who's specialized in issues of orthopedics, so that he can advise. This is a person who needs wheelchair of this kind of modification. This is a person who needs boots, special boots with this kind of modification, so that I don't just, when I want to implement this idea, I don't just come with wheelchairs, 40 of them.
One size fits all.
40 of them, but the people who need are 20. That is blatant wastage. So I must ensure that I have the accurate number of those in need. I have the type of the necessary modifications of what they need, so that at the end of it all, we've identified the problem and fully solved it. And because what I envision with the Universities Association is that we want to identify the problem, we want to identify the solution to the problem, and we want to be part of the solution to the problem fully. You get that? We don't want to be like people will be making calls or press and every other thing or every other avenue that we'll use and stop it at that. No, we want to involve the players, be with them and help craft the solution and see the solutions work. So that at least when doing the evaluations, we get to see this is not like a development that came from our side. These are development that are not we ensure that works out. Because when you just identify the problem and leave it as that occasions even wastage of resources. Because somebody just does it for the sake, not knowing that this person who fully needs this for his or her survival, fully needs this for his or her development. So that is what we want to do in entirety, so that at the end of it all, we don't persons with disabilities are not viewed as it's always used to be, that these persons like are beggars, or these are persons that are waiting to waiting for tokens here and there, but rather these are persons who can fend for themselves, but
just want opportunity.
Yeah, they must be given the opportunities, they must be given the spaces, they must have a society that is well inclusive, to foster their inclusion, foster their development, and foster their safety, and their stay in these spaces. It must be coherent and dignifying in full perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think dignifying is the word.
Yeah.
Has to be dignified.
Yeah.
Sagini, it sounds like this participate conference, a lot of quite impactful, not just conversations, but plans, strategies, points of action are actually taking place. And it's surprising because 2 weeks doesn't feel like a long time, but it sounds like you're able to achieve quite a lot during those 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, of course, this is evidence that a lot of things are happening, and the interfacing, the interactions between, young leaders of different countries can bring very new and very cool ideas, and that commitment that from the conference you're going to do ABCD, and as you've heard, you've started something, So maybe 1 year down the line, there's something that they will report on, and that's exactly how we envisioned, So this is just him, We do not yet know the other 45 participants that were there, what kind of stories they are already telling about the conference, even if it's just barely 2 weeks after the conference. So I feel a lot of hope and envision that we're going to have really good stories from this, and a lot of good change happening, not only with these young leaders, but the change they will cause downwards to the grassroots where they work in those countries, and the collaborations they're going to have between these 3 countries. So
I mean, if there are 44 other people out there just like Joseph, I feel like change is happening. It might be minimal, it might take a bit longer than we would want, but I feel like if there are 45 people like Joseph out there, things will definitely improve. They have to. Sure. They definitely have to. So because now we have to wait until next year for the next participants. What else, or what other roles is Youth Alive as an organization playing in finding these stories, listening to these stories, acting towards the needs that these stories are sort of bringing out and bringing into focus? What other sort of initiatives, programs are ongoing within Youth Alive?
I mean, there's a lot happening. Honestly, currently, there's a lot. I mean, people are very busy. And the international conference is just one of the many activities that we have been doing, And this is our busy season, where currently I left the office and half of the people are outside on the field doing activities, We're going to November, we're gonna have probably me or the finance team in the office alone, So there's a lot that we're doing as an organization currently. So we have 10 active projects that are running, and we have more that we are closing in terms of the deals. We are in talks with the donors and the partners to get started on those projects. I think 2 or 3 of them, and there's also conversation about continuing some of the projects that were there, going into the future.
Right.
So and as I said, our initiatives, they span these 3 thematic areas. One is livelihoods, the other is good governance and human rights, and then we have social well-being and gender equity. But we go beyond what we are able to do with the donors and internally. For instance, for communications, we are trying to advocate for these issues, even beyond what the donors or beyond the project, what the projects are doing. And for instance, stories like his. We feature those stories in what we call the Youth Alive Person of the Month, So we basically look at these young people from the member organizations where we work from the 12 counties, and they really have compelling stories.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of interest. You have to pick out of 20, you have to pick one person to tell the story. So there's a lot of stories that are there that are not being told. And a platform like the Youth Alive Person of the Month helps a lot. We also have conversations on Twitter Space to have a space where these young people and invited guests can come and actually have conversations. Yeah. So we are trying many models beyond the traditional trainings, where you convene people to train them, young people to train them. We are now doing community forums where we interface the community with duty bearers, which is very, very difficult, otherwise. So we fill that gap by, linking the community and the duty bearers. And for the listeners, duty bearers are basically the government, the people in charge of delivering services to the public. So those are duty bearers. So we interface, and we have ventured into now doing things like sports and art, Before the elections, we had what you call Balozi Mtaani in partnership with Nairobi City County. Yeah. And in this campaign, we were running this campaign in many places, but we focused in Nairobi, and I think a bit of Eldoret. Mm-hmm. But in Nairobi here, we worked with our AMOs, and AMOs is just member organizations, these youth-led organizations. And some of them have an element of sports, an element of arts, and we work to them so that they can use skits to teach about peace and advocate for peace building and it's I think it's efforts like ours and many other people, efforts from media, from government, from everyone that made the elections that we had very peaceful. So we are letting these young people lead in some of these initiatives, and we also let them do their own activities, but we sub-grant. Currently, we have a scheme where we are sub-granting some of these organizations,
So for those who may not understand, what does sub-granting mean in layman's terms?
Basically, we the pool of funds we get from our donors, we are sharing those funds.
Now the member organizations, the working groups in the 12 counties.
Yeah, so they can also do something of their own, instead of us going there on the ground ourselves, we can also give them an opportunity to do something. Because anyway, they know those communities better, and they need that empowerment. And so we have been sub-granting them and also training them on various things like resource mobilization. We have been having webinars around things like monitoring and evaluation, finances. So, I mean, there's a lot that we do, but we are mostly now starting to focus on our member organizations, on this model of hand-holding the younger organizations. They could be really small, maybe a self-help. It's like teaching. It's like teaching someone how to fish rather than giving them the fish. So that's the model we are trying to. We're looking who are the young leaders who have really good potential in terms of, let's say, fishing. That is like changing things in their communities, and we pick those. We make them part of our member organizations or working groups from the 12 counties. And then we train them, and then we mentor. We give them access to opportunities like the international conference, and sub-granting now these funds that we are talking about.
So it truly is a completely end-to-end sort of act of service, of mentorship, of capacity building, of advocacy, of resource mobilization, that you're not just giving them tools and leaving them to fend for themselves. You're actually a part of the process through and through.
Yeah, actually, I mean, that's a big component of how we run these things, how we do our initiatives or projects, is that we're thinking like even after we are gone, about this sustainability. Right. And this is why this model works for us, because these young organizations, these young leaders, we continue the good work beyond what we have been able to do with them, so that means there is a lot of sustainability. And now we are really focusing on monitoring and evaluation, and making sure that the good work that we have done, the stories are being told, the numbers are coming back, the impact is being seen. So we are very deliberate that whichever money or human resources or time that is put into these things is actually giving results in the end, and it's sustainable. Even 10, 20 years, when we the young people right now will be the older folks.
The wheels will keep turning.
The wheels be
just the way Joseph was mentioning.
And this is a very good example, because working with students means that they are younger than even us. So these students will cascade down to even younger students, and that will continue. I think hopefully forever.
I mean, that's definitely the plan, to leave behind a future that is better than what we found.
I
think before we wrap up, Joseph, I've heard you mention a number of areas that your organization and the association is focused on, whether it's advocacy, whether it's campaigning for policy change or legislative change, whether it's resource mobilization, whether it's getting into rooms and networks where these decisions are actually being formed. Before we go, what is it that you need for whoever is listening and will be more than happy to be an ally, to be a supporter? What is it that you need that can further the cause and the ambition, the dream that you have for an inclusive and just society?
Thank you for the work that we do. Coming up with this idea. One big challenge, that comes in is resources. It's one thing that gives headache, because you have a good idea to work on that can bring meaningful change, but getting the resources to help actualize the dream, because resources control everything, nearly everything, and so that is the biggest issue that comes in, because even now, as the association has nearly everything that we need in terms of making it operational. But that we're even planning to do, if resources are we are well endowed in terms of resources, then we're planning to do an official launch of the association, possibly in early December. But I know we're still in the process of mobilizing for resources, and if this works out for us, then we're good to go, because the launching will be a very, very critical issue for us, because that is when we'll converge the stakeholders and tell them of our presence, and also what we want to work on moving forward to ensure that disability inclusion works. And it talked about sustainability, because for me, my biggest goal is to ensure that issues about disability inclusion get to the global world, because we must work it out and ensure that persons with disabilities get to explore their potential, not just in Kenya, not just in my village, but rather, we bring the global picture on board, because we even have global policies, and we must ensure that all those policies have, the element of disability inclusion, because it must start with them as players in the global arena, be it those who sit in the UN, AU, and all other organizations, EU, and all others, so that we ensure that whatever they're bringing on board, because we have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and of very much interest to us is SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure, SDG 10 on issues reduced inequalities, on SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, as well as SDG 17 on partnerships. Because when we bring all these on board and craft them all together, it will hamper and ensure that disability inclusion works well. Because it is not just about doing an activity, or rather building it can't start from making a building, but rather the engagement that we have, issues about communication, and it starts from issues especially from SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. That when we're talking even about issues about peace, issues about justice, are we inclusive enough? Because for us to talk about peace, we can't it can't start from making an elevator or putting up a building, but rather information sharing. The information we are sharing, are we ensuring that it's inclusive in its entirety, so that like the information I get is like the same information without even an element of distortion. When a person with hearing impairment gets it, a person with visual impairment gets it, because like we have different communication formats that like we need to be informed about. And when we're having these engagements, I bring these people on board. The challenge that we have, especially in the run-up to the 2022 general elections, is that many people are calling for peace. Many people are having engagements calling for peace, but we're leaving out persons with disabilities who have like the very, very people who, when violence erupts, are the very, very first persons who will be the victims and the dire victims of such. And when you're having engagements of peace, these persons are left out. Or even when invited, they are left out in issues, like information relay, communication systems that we're having, and it brings a big challenge to these persons. And so we must ensure that we sit down as a community, ensure that issues about disability inclusion are supported and resources that are availed, so that these people are not just seen as beggars, but rather people who can drive change in the community. Because I don't want to do it for persons with disability. I want to do it for the general community, so that these persons are seen as viable people, as an outstanding people who can go do it. Because one person says this, Helen Keller, that true vision is not like reliance on issues you cite. Like you can have that sight, but no vision. Blindness does not bring about no lack of vision. You can be sighted but without vision. It is true sight is in vision, not about like having your eyes and having them sing. Because this is a person who had no eyes. She lost sight at an early age, but she became a renowned individual. And so we must ensure that we craft systems that support these persons. Stephen Hawking says that my advice to other persons with disabilities will be, concentrate on what your disability doesn't hinder you from. And what it hinders you from doing, don't complain about it. Leave it at that. There's a reason why. Yeah, so that is my bit.
Wow. Boniface, anything anything that can help push forward the programs, the objectives of Youth Alive that anyone listening can play a part in contributing, whether that's even signing up as one of the member organizations, anything how can people get involved with the organization a bit more?
Yeah, so increasingly one of the biggest good problems, I can call them, that we have is that we're having a lot of young organizations coming to us for help. And that also means that we need resources. We talked of resources. Now for us, we are sort of the ones that are helping them get resources, but we need partnerships with maybe private sector. We need private sector players to have some interest in youth issues, and we look forward to collaborating with especially the private sector. And even the donors that we already have, we're looking to actually continue working with them. Now the way that you can continue with our good work, or maybe seeing our good work, is social media. You can follow us, even if you might not donate anything, but you can follow us and see the good work that we're doing. You can follow us on LinkedIn, on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook at Youth Alive Kenya, or you can simply just search Youth Alive Kenya, and she's going to show you how you can follow us and read about us and all that. So your support is in many forms and ways, and one of them is just following us and sharing about our work. Is also talking about our work, and if you're interested in partnering with us, whether you are a young organization or a big organization or private, from the private sector, you're very welcome, because we need these concerted efforts so that we can actually create a society where every young person can achieve their potential. Yes.
Joseph, how can we reach you on social media, or even follow up on the work the association is doing?
Although the association has not made its presence with the social media, but it will soon. For me, you can follow me, Joseph B. Owino, through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Joseph Owino. That is how you'll find me, and I'll get to engage and see how to bolster this approach and make world, an inclusive world.
I mean, I'm definitely going to be following you and the work your association is doing.
Thank you.
Please keep us in mind when you're having the launch. I can speak both for myself and I believe on behalf of the team that makes up Youth Plus Africa. You definitely have an ally and a supporter in us. So
thank you.
Don't be afraid to reach out. We can see what we can do together.
Thank you so much.
I've really been very humbled by your conversation and your experience. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
It goes a long way.
Asante sana.
Nashukuru.
That's gonna be it for today. We're gonna post the social media links for both of their accounts in the links below. And until next week, this is goodbye, God bless, and thanks for watching.